Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. It is the 21st of October. Welcome. Welcome to the Facebook Live for the group Exploring the Infinite Potential in Presence. I hope you all like the new group name. It came as an insight from our group meditations that we've been exploring the potential in presence. And so I changed the name of the group last week. I hope it causes some kind of curiosity, some kind of wonderment, and everyone gets into the mode of exploring their potential in presence. We're here with our panel. Eileen, who keeps us streamlined in order. Uh, she keeps us going. Thank you, Eileen. And she's going to provide her insights as well. We have Caesar, who is also a healer, Reiki. You've done Reiki, Caesar, spiritual teacher. We have April, who also is a medium, a healer. You've done Reiki as well, right? You use Reiki as a method, and a spiritual teacher with us. And y'all are familiar with April. Now y'all are getting familiar with Caesar. And of course, we have Luis, and Kelly's on his way. So he will be joining as we are launched into this Facebook Live. So last week, we were actually talking about limiting beliefs. And I want to take a couple of limiting beliefs as such an expansive topic that it will take us about like 3 or 4 sessions to, or even maybe more, to go through limiting beliefs. So I will get into the limiting beliefs. Before I talk about limiting beliefs, let's get into a question that was posted on the last Facebook Live. And the question says, sometimes I feel that closer I get to presence, my family steps in and I fall into old conditioned patterns. For example, my mother is 80, 90 years old and is still acting in an unconscious way as she did when I was younger, to take over and make decisions and actions for me because she knows best, then disempowering me. She continues these actions with my children to this day, undermining me. So let's get started, April. You missed out last week. We missed you. So let's get you started. If you want to speak about what are the nuances, what are the limiting, I can see quite a few limiting beliefs in that whole passage itself. But go ahead.
Yeah, there are several. I was kind of wondering, now this is from last week, like, how old are the children now? Are we talking about little children? Or are we talking about older children?
I would think adult children, because if the mother is 90,
Yeah.
they may be older, like in their 20s.
Well, and that's one of the questions, is because then that tells me there's a pattern that the children and her kind of evolved in. So the children, when the mother, the grandmother is undermining the mom, the children aren't going to really have respect, right? They're not going to, maybe they don't believe that mom can make decisions because grandma's been always stepping in and taking over. The first part to me is just her first sentence has an ability, an opportunity for acceptance. So what I have found is that we put out these wishes and these desires to the universe, and our desire is like way over here, and we're way over here, and we say, okay, I want this, and the universe, God's answer is always yes. So he says, okay, but you're over here. So let me put some things in your way to get you over here. And if you look at them as opportunities to keep going and to keep focused and to keep changing their exercises to get you to where you want to go, that's that, she says, old patterns. But if she looked at those instead like lessons, like triumphs, like, okay, I'm going to try this again tomorrow. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again and try not to do the old patterns. That's one thing. The other one is, and I had to do this in my life, is not caring what mom's opinion is. The only opinion that truly matters in life is your own. And as long as she cares and that it kind of like hits her in the heart, mom will continue to have that power. So those are some of my initial thoughts about it.
I just realized I was on mute. Um, Acceptance of the fact that her mother is going to be unconscious, and that is the signal, or the universe is telling her to accept it, right? So beautiful. Best pointer that she could have. That excuse me. This is the level of consciousness that my mother is at. She's always going to be unconscious, and that is what is. That is what reality is. And what Eckhart says in one of his talks called The Source of All Trust is we have expectations. And if we say my mother should not be unconscious, then there is a discrepancy between reality of what is and our expectation. And that's an unpleasant way to live. That's an insane way to live, right? So accept that she is unconscious. Beautiful. Thank you, April. Louise, did you want to contribute to, for example, my mother is 90 years old and still acting in an unconscious way?
Yeah, I think that is the first step, is acceptance, and also an understanding that people only act the way that they act is under the amount of consciousness that they have. So a lot of times that helps me when I see people acting unconsciously, or I want to take it personally. I realize that that's the level that they're at. And so it's a lot easier to accept when you have that understanding and not take it, personally. I think a lot of times we take things that personally, that we feel like we're being attacked by this person's unconsciousness. But it's not that case. It's not that way. They will act the way that they act, and we need to act the way that we act on the level, depending on our level of consciousness. So that's what came up for me.
So you feel the same way, that acceptance was the key?
Yes, definitely. That's the first step.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Caesar, did you have any different insights or similar insights?
I think very similar insight as far as the acceptance goes, and the fact that there's children involved. Depending on the age of the children, we know that the ego's biggest need is the need to be right. And when you are aware of the fact that the mother is acting unconsciously, there's nothing else to figure out. So if it is affecting, her personally, the first mistake is that she's actually taken it personally, like Louise just said. I fully agree there, and definitely an opportunity to learn. And uh, to give her the power that it affects you, by giving it your attention and wondering why, God, I can't believe she's, acting this way. And just to have the understanding that, she's acting in an unconscious way, right in line with what everybody else said. There's nothing else to figure out there. And then probably the best answer is just agree with her and say, okay. There's no need for an argument that's not going to get you anywhere. The awareness that she is unconscious is pretty much, all she really needs to know, and to understand that she can only let it affect her if she allows it to. And pretty much by taking it personal, Eckert says that, the unconscious ways do sneak back in occasionally, depending on the situations and circumstances around you. And, to become aware of it, is the key. And that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Caesar.
Absolutely.
What came to my mind from your insight was, how did I become the point of attraction of an unconscious mother? Right? So, what is the vibrational energy in me that causes the mother is there as your spiritual teacher, right? The unconsciousness of the mother is there as a spiritual teacher. So, the unconscious mother is pushing your button to show you where you need to heal most, right? And that's the point of attraction. Your irritation about your mother, and saying that she disempowers me, your powerlessness is the point of attraction, right? That's what even Esther Hicks would say. How did I attract this situation? And the point of attraction is your disempowerment. So the more powerful you feel, the more presence power. So when you say I get to presence, my family steps in and I fall into old condition patterns, that shows that the strength of the presence power is not there. The presence power needs to be deeper, right? So do more meditation, increase your breath work, give yourself solitude, more pulling away from the unconscious patterns of everyone else, then you won't get pulled. And then when you deepen, then you allow this unconscious mother to be as she is, right? So she continues these actions. And it will so happen that the moment you realize your powerlessness is what is attracting the mother, the moment you feel empowered, and you allow it to be and not get irritated by her actions, it's okay. It's okay. She's the grandmother. Let her take care of your kids, even if they're adults. It's okay for my mother to come instruct my grown children. The day that you allow and you completely become humble in your energy, is the day she will stop or she will pass away. She's 90 years old. What may be holding her is all this soul contract, like April says. April gave us the best insight. The soul contract that your mother, the soul that the mother is that she's there to show you how she's not going to be a mother, right? And it's our job to mother ourselves and bomb ourselves. Antidote. What does Byron Katie says? God spare me from seeking love, approval, and appreciation uh, from anyone else. Amen. So something like that. Stop looking for approval from your mother or your children. And presence power is what will give you that. Thank you, Caesar, for instigating that thought process. Thank you. Appreciate it. Eileen, you're full of smiles. I think you have something up your sleeve.
It's because each person that shared gave a tidbit of something that I was thinking. It was like a little chain of events that kind of happened around my screen. And then I was getting ready to add on greatest spiritual teacher, and then Poonam said it, and I was like, well, there's the last one. But yeah, I mean, until she accepts he or she accepts and gets that lesson. The lesson's just going to keep coming over and over. I know from experience.
Any questions online, Eileen?
I am at the moment reading comments, but it looks like they're just giving comments, feedback on the question.
Okay, awesome. Thank
No
you.
questions.
What else do you see as a limiting belief? Do you see anything else, Eileen, on her?
One person was talking about the mind and the ego, talking about, you know, being prone to unconsciousness. I mean, we all are, but having forgiveness is key. And then Lakshmi mentioned that there's bondage between her and her mom. I'm assuming her. Only acceptance can release it. Freedom will come to both through the acceptance and surrender. And then another comment just came in that I haven't read yet. Talking about conditioning from parents. Compassion for your parents and yourself is what's needed.
Perfect.
So,
Who said compassion for parents and yourself? That's
sorry, my other screen is not as clear. Marty,
Okay.
someone actually I haven't seen comment before. Marty Musbrucker. Sorry if I read it wrong, because that screen is not as clear as this one in front of me.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. So compassion for ourselves and our mother or our unconscious parents, right? So I'll go one more round. If any other insights come through, ask you what the limiting belief can be. Eileen, be ready. It's going to end at you, okay? April, go ahead. Thank you.
I have a list of them.
No, I think that I think we're doing really good as far as addressing it. The disempowerment, you guys were already hitting on that a second ago, that it looks like she now has a belief because she says, as she did when I was younger, she would take over. And that tells me that then she has created a belief from childhood that is attaching to this. And we're getting disempowerment, which also leads to low self-esteem, possibly depression, low self-worth, even low self-efficacy, which is not the ability for me that it's the belief that I can, which would relate to the children, her raising or taking care of her children. So it's just a whole lack of self-worth. I can tell you what I did with my dad and my mom. My dad, I took the very concept of my dad is not well and he's not going to be well. He has some big issues. He's got some deep, deep pains. And you know what? That's okay. He doesn't have to be well. And I can still love him. I can still respect him. But I don't have to take in any of that anymore. Now, my mother was a different story because my mom, it was kind of like truly like a really Stockholm kind of thing. It was really fun. So towards the end, she would come over and she'd go to one of our houses and tell us that we couldn't cook or we couldn't clean, or so she'd be standing there and I'd say, you know, Mom, you know, I can't cook. My pans are over there. We're starving. So I would play with it. And I would say, aren't you going to cook for us? Because I no longer cared. I no longer, like Eileen and Louise, like Louise was saying, I no longer took it personally. None of it was my issue anymore. It was all outside of me. And I had compassion for it and for them. but I no longer let it hurt me. So that's kind of the other part that I'm looking at here. If she could really learn to just let mom be like that, but know that she still has power and worth, you know, in that sense. I don't mean ego power, but, you know, she still has worth. And I would just sit back and look at mom and I probably giggle to myself and say, oh, look at what she's doing now. So,
And like these days, kids don't, I don't even think they follow the grandmother or the mother. They're going to do, millennials are going to do what they want to do. They have their mind of their own, right? So it's okay if the grandmother is saying something or you're saying something. The child is going to go do something else, right? So perfect. That's the surrender. That's going to be the take a deep breath, and it's okay whoever's saying. So perfect. Thank you, April, for that insight. And I think Kelly is joining or has joined.
Yes,
Good
I
evening,
have.
Kelly. Good evening, Kelly.
Evening, everyone.
We're going through a question. I don't know if you can see it on the chat, Kelly.
Oh, I don't know if. Well, I just got here, so.
Yeah, I'm going to post
In the
it to
truck.
you.
Oh, there we go.
So, Louise, go ahead. If you got any more insights into
Oh, right.
about the limiting belief.
Yeah, the only thing that really came to me is because I was trying to figure out like how I overcame some of this. And I know I say this all the time, but it's really has been my experience and so true. But the more that I go deeper and the more that I spend on meditating, and when there's especially an issue like something like this, when I spend a lot of time just being in silence and being present, a lot of these issues just fall off. So they don't become, they're not issues anymore. And I know it sounds kind of like, I tell people that a lot and they're like, how can they just disappear? But that's actually been my experience, is that I feel like a lot of stuff I don't really have to do. Like I don't have to do a lot of forgiving, or I don't have to do, like it's just naturally transforms itself, or the situation changes or something along that line. And so I guess my recommendation would be is to just spend more time being present, in presence and in silence, and to just trust that the outcome will come the more you're grounded and connected.
Perfect. So increase your presence practice.
Yes.
And that would be increase your meditation, increase your breath work, increase your communing with nature, however, what gives you the stillness. So you're one with your inner beingness, or aligned with your inner beingness, and you'll realize that your inner being, which is connected to source, God does not feel disempowered. God does not say, oh, my mother is saying so and so, so I'm feeling less than, right? The terms that she used, which is, she continues these actions with my children to this day, undermining. God does not feel undermined, right? And God does not go into, so that alignment with inner beingness, we are connected to source, and we are a formless, invisible essence. So none of the conditioned patterns exist, no disempowerment exists, no undermining exists. We are full of power, right? That's the infinite potential. So thank you. Thank you for that, Louise. Appreciate it. Caesar, any additional insights on limiting beliefs with her passage? And then I'll go to what Betty is asking.
Yeah, I would just be curious on how she's responding or reacting to the situation, her level of consciousness. I found that what you see in others exists in yourself as well. And again, like you were speaking on growing the problems, I believe it was last week, or it might have been something I just heard the other day. But regardless, the more attention you give it, you're actually growing the problem. When is she able to let go of it and surrender to it? And instead of, Eckhart always says, instead of why asking, why is this happening to me, but rather, what is this trying to teach me? But I would be curious as to how she's responding and reacting to it, to be able to give a little more insight on it. But I would definitely, say just to let it go, surrender to it, accept it as it is, that she is that way and it may never change. And definitely don't take things personal. And that's been, said a couple times. So that's it.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. So Betty has a question. So Kelly, we are going to move to this question because we are on our second round of, so Betty says, still on the topic of self-limiting beliefs, I'm curious to know your thoughts on heightened sensitivity through spiritual practices and spiritual development and specific events, illness, traumatic experience, etc. We often hear stories about certain people with a gift or with psychic abilities, clairvoyant, claircognizant. She cites quite a few of those gifts. Some say they were born with this gift. With information overload, the ease of access to all sorts of information on the internet, we can even observe an increasing number of people awakening and questioning, changing their own belief systems for the first time. With that in mind, I wonder how to best direct or guide intuitively spiritual seekers who are in the early stages of awakening so that they don't end up becoming lost in a deluge of information, that they end up losing their sense of self, deriving their sense of identity with what they're discovering, hence creating and attaching an identity after identity. So I'm going to stop there. So how do I direct, uh, still on the topic of self-limiting, I'm curious to know your thoughts on heightened sensitivity through spiritual practices. I think we talked about it, but Kelly, if you wanted to start, since you've done or been a psychic medium and you have additional insights into what your favorite phrase, Kelly, multidimensional being. Let's
Yeah,
talk about
a good place to start.
multidimensionality. Go ahead. Thank you.
Well, this is a really important topic to look at and talk about because it is a problem. I mean, even before the internet happened, I can remember back then. Before the internet happened, this was already a problem in the spiritual community that I was in contact with. And I have seen an increasingly profound instability in the spiritual community as a result of the deluge of information and so many possibilities and options. But I'm not going to really talk about the spiritual community because it's not necessary. The real point here is stability versus instability, fear versus love. When we do not understand that we are being triggered and that we have emotional defense mechanisms that will lie to us and convince us that we need to do something to validate our ego, when we do not understand that the monkey mind is busy trying to distract us and throw shiny things at us to keep us from being still and keep us from going inside and being aligned with our hearts, then we will go all over the place looking for information and being distracted by information that is irrelevant to our evolution. The biggest thing to understand, especially as a someone who was a medium, a psychic, and a Reiki healer and pranic healer and all those other things, the reality for me, in my experience, was going inside and deepening my stillness practice, deepening my connection to my heart, deepening my capacity to let myself feel and to be present with what I'm feeling. And that taught me how to actually discern, not just understand, not just know and feel stuff, but actually discern the origins of thoughts and feelings and emotions and information, even in books that I'd pick up, sort of where the whole concept of psychometry, or being able to read information from touching things and holding things in your hands. I was really really good at that when I was younger, when I was practicing. But everything in my experience has always come back to going inside, aligning with your heart, and learning how to be still. The more I've learned how to be still inside and to hold myself against even the raging infernos of soul trauma and rage and pain and fear and anxiety and depression over the years, dealing with some of this stuff, the more I've gone inside and the more I've been still, the more it has clarified everything else I've come into contact with. No matter where the information is coming from, whether or not it's from a book, whether or not it's from a person, whether or not it's from the wonderful internet. Gosh knows there's, so much to distract us on the internet. And the really important thing to understand here is that is the whole point of the illusion, is to keep us distracted and to keep us from listening to our hearts, keep us from listening to our bodies, keep us from understanding that we can actually be still inside and that we can regain control of our alignment, of our emotions, of our feelings, and that we have that power within us. And this is really, really important to understand, because the illusion, the Maya, everything out there is designed to keep us swinging back and forth in duality, the extremes of emotions, to keep us distracted, to keep us from being in alignment, to keep us from actually feeling that reality of being still inside and actually physically present. Everything else is icing on the cake. When you can go inside and feel yourself aligned with your heart and still, when you understand, when you begin to stop your mind, and this is, again, another key element here, when you understand that you can actually stop your mind, and that there are two types of dialogue. And this is one of the wonderful things about what Eckhart Tolle has actually been sharing with people, is that there is the dialogue, the internal dialogue, and then there's the observer of that dialogue, realizing that there are two voices. It's really, really super important to understand that the voice of the observer is the doorway to stillness and alignment inside. And everything that Eckhart has shared with people is actually about that key element. All the concepts he talks about is about that moment of choice, of observation, whether or not you're going to stay distracted and stay embroiled in the shiny, squirrely monkey mind stuff and all the information out there, or whether or not you're going to step back into the voice of the observer and align with that stillness inside. And regardless of whether or not a person is clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, it doesn't matter. Those are all cities. Those are still distractions from the depths of connection that you can achieve inside. They are experiences along the way that will happen naturally. Everybody has that capacity within them. This is one of the amazing things about being human. We have access to all these multiple dimensions of information and energy, and the human language is actually so much vaster than just the verbal stuff that comes out of our mouths, that is so important to understand the distinction between being distracted by the outside world and going inside. So regardless of how psychic a person is, how sensitive a person is, and this is one of the things that I also understood, I was extremely sensitive where going out with people, going out in public would leave me raw at the end of the day and exhausted most of the time. And this is where my Qigong practice comes in. It saved my bacon so many times. I do not have enough fingers and toes. But when I went inside and realigned with my stillness and let go of the guilt or the shame or the embarrassment or the attachment to being so sensitive. This is also the other thing to understand, is like in the spiritual community, there's a lot of attachment to being sensitive and needing to do something with it. The first thing people need to do is to stop being attached to being so sensitive and being so special, because their own special qualities are really inside of them. And when you go inside and you step into that space of the voice of the observer, you will really begin to learn what being aware and awake and sensitive really is. And you can still be clairaudient and clairsentient and a healer and everything like that. But it's when you go inside and you align with that space, you drop away from that limiting belief of actually believing that you're too sensitive to function. That was one of my experiences. And that's my perspective.
Beautiful. I think that is like the key pointer. I would say to Betty, as Eckhart says, right? It is not about, can I sit in 20 minutes of meditation and be still? Can you be still as soon as you wake up? Can you be still as you're brushing your teeth? Can you be still as you're making your first cup of coffee? Can you be still when you're writing that email? Can you get into traffic and be still? That's what Kelly's talking about. What is the depth of stillness? Because all this multidimensional being, this being psychic, being telepathic, being the cities that he's talking about, levitation, right? You are not going, nobody is going to get those cities without having the depth of presence. There is a depth of presence in whoever is a healer. There's a depth of presence in whoever is a psychic medium. They can touch, or they can maybe be a little bit unconscious, but at the time that they are being a medium, they're totally aligned with their inner beingness, or they are in full presence. And that we have to know is the teaching that Eckhart is teaching, right? He's starting this Be the Light course. So perfect, Kelly. So what I would say to this new spiritual seeker, don't seek anything else other than presence power. That's what even the group is about, is first strengthen, intensify your presence. Then you'll be like Louise. Anything and everything happens with your parents, your grandparents, whatever is happening, you let it just pass through, right? Allowing what is to be. That presence power is what's going to keep you surrendered and allow the gift of allowing. So Eileen, thank you, Kelly. Since you always say that everybody else spoke, what exact idea you had, since you've been planting thoughts in all our heads, now is your time to speak up.
Oh, we talk about limiting beliefs in my house a lot. So it's just a topic that I have a lot of background on, I guess. I don't know how to say it. I feel like the first person who commented and even this second one, I feel like the limiting beliefs are everywhere. And so even for me, where I kind of try to consciously be aware of them, I even sometimes catch myself and be like, oh my gosh, I did it again, you know? And my kids are 8 and 11, and I talk with them about it a lot. Even like, I know I've talked about it on here before, like with health issues, you know, and we talked about it last week with food and nutrition, you know, not going to be able to eat a certain thing, you're not going to be able to eat a certain thing, you know, and if you think you can, then you will. And so that happened today with my son. Like, well, I didn't do that class today because I knew I couldn't do it by myself. Like, I can't do it. Well, if you think you're not going to be able to do it, of course you're not going to be able to do it. So going into everything with the, you know, not like the opposite, not a limiting belief, but then of, you know, accepting whatever it is and doing. And I find that going into things consciously in a mindset of like gratitude and positivity. It just, things, I guess, manifest themselves so that it's not limited in that sense. And I find that things are kind of just now happening for me. But I still have limiting beliefs. I still have things that get me. And then it happens, and then I'm like, oh, there it is again, you know. But that's why I think all of us are like on that journey, you know, like it's a process. And I was talking to Poonam the other day, like just a few days ago, like I was like, oh, here's another one. And something that again has been with me like my entire life for as long as I can remember, like the last 30 years. And even after this 14 months of this experience, like didn't even think of applying that process to that. So like this person mentions highly sensitive person. So my son and I are both diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, which is, I know Kelly probably knows what it is. But like, that's been 30 years of my life. And in an instant, just recognizing that belief system that I've held, just melted away, you know, like, and now I've had a few days of like, oh, wow, like it's just in my head, you know, not in my head there, but just looking at it differently, looking at it as more of a blessing than a curse, I guess.
And you were able to connect it with the fact that that's what is preventing you from inhabiting your body, because that's
Yes.
been your mantra for the past few months. I cannot feel my inner body. I cannot feel my inner body, right?
When it's actually the exact opposite. Like I feel
more.
it intensely, but I just like my mind, you know, playing tricks on me. But and now that I've, you know, thought about it and I've talked to my son about it too, that how amazing it is, because all of those times where I was in suffering and really, you know, it's, you know, the universe's way of trying to get me into my inner body. Like, look, can't you feel your pants? Can't you? And resisting that and fighting it for 30 years, resisting every feeling and every sound and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am connected. I can, you know, experience those things. I am experiencing them nonstop. But now it's not a bad thing. So it's definitely been a wild few days of coming to that realization.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you for that insight.
Mm-hmm.
Quite exemplary. And going back to your timer example, I think Eckhart's website now has a timer. On Kelly once said you had a watch every 5 minutes. You would check, am I really present? Eckhart's website actually now has a timer. You can, on the app, you can set a timer every 5 minutes. Check how intensely present am I? How intensely present am I? Right.
Yeah, I have a random mindfulness bell. But I was just telling Ryan the other day that it is always malfunctioning. And then we had a conversation about, you know, the fact that I'm literally getting reminders for presence nonstop all day, every day. And he's like, well, I don't think you need the bell if you're feeling and hearing and seeing these things like all day, every day. And I was like, oh gosh. And so it's funny because I fix the bell, and then the next day I woke up, the bell doesn't work.
That's good.
I'm not meant
The
to use
universe,
the bell.
the universe is saying you don't need the bell.
You don't need the bell.
You're already present. Thank you. Louise, anything come up for you as far as clairvoyance, sensitivity, and what a new spiritual seeker should be
No,
doing?
I feel like both Kelly and Eileen described it very well, and I'm really happy though to hear your experience, Eileen. That's pretty awesome to
It's
hear
been a
that.
wild couple of days. I'm like, you know, I keep having those experiences where it's like life changing in an instant. You know.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. I love hearing that.
And then
But yeah, I feel
me-
like
she sends me a text
she did.
message. I need to talk to you.
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Louise. April, anything come up for you about clairvoyance? And you're a psychic medium, so you can give insights
Yeah.
into what that experience is actually. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I am very psychic medium. Like I've said, I can't even count how many people I've read in the last couple of weeks. I'm trying to figure out though what exactly her question is. Like, so she's calling it highly sensitive people. Basically, it doesn't matter which ability you have, it's energy. It's called reading energy, is what it is. Whether you read energy through hearing, or you read it through seeing, or you get it as a message, or you feel it, it's just energy. And I guess that's highly sensitive. Um, and then so I'm trying to figure out what exactly is it that she seems to be kind of upset about it. Is it just the fact that there's so many psychics on the internet now? Like Facebook is definitely full of them. And I myself can't even believe how many people are reading cards. So is it that, and she's kind of concerned about false teachers, or
I didn't read the second part, so I don't know about the second part. I'm just addressing
well,
the first part, which is the
yeah, I'm wondering if she's worried about false teachers, and then people following some things that some teachers are saying that perhaps are not the, you know, the best advice. But basically, psychic ability is just the ability to read energy. That's all that is. And for me, you cannot do that without God, without source. You cannot do that without an internal connection. Um, and I'm also she's talking about setting boundaries and people not going to places.
I didn't read the second part, so we'll go to the second part in a few
Yeah.
minutes.
So anyways, basically,
It was all one comment. It just Zoom only allows a certain amount of text, so I had to cut it into three parts.
no, that's okay. Well, I was just trying to figure out which part exactly it is that she's having an issue with. So, but I just think that for one, we all have it. We are all born with it. Now, some are born better playing piano or better playing baseball, right? Or some are better at this so-called psychic ability thing. And if you want to develop it, the way to develop it is to connect to source more and more and more. That is because then, well, there is no better teacher. So that is my part on that one.
Thank you, April. And presence is the way. The alignment with inner beingness is the way, the conscious connection to source, as Eckhart says. So increase your presence practice. It seemed like the first question had the same answer as the second question. So thank you. Caesar, you want to add on to what Louise, Kelly, and April had about clairvoyance?
Sure. I agree. It is definitely reading energy. Um, I'm not sure the ability to tell people the future. I get a lot of people. I'm a channel myself. I read source energy, and as far as being sensitive, you definitely have to be rooted in presence. Um, something that Kelly said, the multi-dimensional beings. Correct. I say vibrational beings first and foremost. And when I channel, what I do is I try to raise my vibrational frequency. I root myself in presence. And the first 5 minutes I'm discussing with the client, I give them, brief instructions on try to still the mind prior to starting a session. And in the first 5 minutes of our experience, I'm basically getting them to raise their vibrational frequency as well. And in turn, that raises mine, because when you're going to make a connection with source is never going to come down here to meet us. We have to obtain a certain level of, high vibrational frequencies to do that. I'm not a medium. I believe everybody has the ability to channel. Everybody is in tune. And I'm going to touch on the fluoride thing. Scientifically, there's been no evidence that fluoride does anything for the teeth or bones or anything like that, rather than calcifies the pineal gland, which is the soul, the third eye. And that is what puts us in touch with source. I believe that is our brain for being intuitive, in touch with spirit. And being a vibrational being, the ability or the sensitivity level that one possesses depends again on their beliefs. And we're talking about limited beliefs here. So let's talk about, from a psychological standpoint, what a belief actually is. And to me, it's a repeated thought. You keep having a repeated thought about a particular thing and it becomes a belief. And I think any belief limits you, regardless of what the belief is. I believe once you have a belief on something, I believe you're limiting yourself. Because now if you believe in something in particular, you're really not open to anything else to allow it in. So it's best to just not have any thoughts or beliefs. To me, the attachment, like Kelly said, the monkey brain just always tries to confuse and steps in there. But yeah, the mind should be used as a tool, not to run our lives. And it's important to be present. And she was talking about the bell, and that's pretty awesome. That reminded me of the story Eckert told about the island with the birds. You are here, you are now. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. But presence still is the key there. You must be rooted in presence to be able to be sensitive to reading anybody's energy. So
Thank you so much, Caesar.
thank you.
And the way you would know that you are in presence, or that human being would know that their presence power is increasing, is their life will start to flow with ease. The challenges go away. Like Louise was saying, right? When you're in that, look at Louise's energy. Like it is so allowing, like very soft, right? So you become very soft and you allow whatever it is, right? So that's what I feel is, you'll see that you just get moved to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and next thing. And very quickly, I'll say, so before I started this, when I started this Facebook group, I was working at a Fortune 50 company, and I actually had resistance. I wanted to start like a meditation practice within my group. I had some resistance. And I went to the next thing. I went to the VP. That VP led me to another person. That another person led me to a general manager. That general manager led me to my general manager. And then I started mindfulness within my business unit, right? So that's how supported you will feel, that you will have the ability to talk to a CEO or to Oprah or whoever it may be, right, in this world. That's how connected you will be. Things will just appear. If you're publishing a book, you're I need to ask Louise when we circle back around. When you're publishing a book, it'll be like your publisher will appear, your editor will appear, and they will come support you. They won't ask you questions. It's just like an alignment that it is there. And that's how you know that you're doing the right thing. Right. So let me get to the second part, which I did not read. With the information load, now we're becoming spiritual seekers who are in the early stages of awakening. They might come across certain teachers that speak about highly sensitive people and empaths and put emphasis on the importance of setting boundaries, which I myself had questioned about many times in the past as to whether or not this was another self limiting belief. So, setting boundaries, because now you think you've made an identity that you're an empath, right? And now you're setting a boundary. So she's right, was another self-limiting belief, which someone had learned only through an internet and with which got them to thinking in the first place, hence became a belief. And then they derived their sense of identity based on this belief, creating and attaching themselves to an identity, hence limiting themselves with oughts and shoulds, that they resort to isolating or distancing themselves from families and friends and or reducing their contact with individuals. There are also those who claim to have awakened but avoid certain people or places because they believe they are highly sensitive people or empaths, energies around. I'm curious because we can observe that despite the ease of access to social media. So this person, spiritual seeker, is now thinking that they are an empath from some other, learned to be an empath from another spiritual teacher, but now they're saying, I'm going to set boundaries and not communicate with my family. Kelly, you wanted to start? Thank you. Thank you, Caesar.
Sure. So setting boundaries is an interesting concept. And I do agree with what you're saying. One of the things that I witnessed in the spiritual community and that I also went through as well is the attachment to being an empath, the attachment to being a highly sensitive person, the attachment to being too sensitive to energy. And this is a really important learning experience for me, because when I began to understand that my monkey mind was using it as a control mechanism to limit my sense of power, my personal belief in myself, my personal ability to align with myself and to be still inside, and I had to like control all these things to be safe. When I started to go inside, when I started to do a lot of standing stake, the holding of a static posture to still my mind, it really changed dramatically, because the more still I got inside, the less it mattered being out around people. And this is one of the things that I find to be used as an emotional crutch and an aspect of emotional codependency, by being attached to a belief in self, a limited belief in self of being too sensitive. Now, granted, there are people with physical conditions, diagnosed with psychiatric conditions. There are certain realities to take into account here, and to not just completely, do not misunderstand that I am dismissing any of that or any situation that anyone is currently in right now. I'm just sort of sharing my own personal experience of moving out of that attachment from my own perspective. When I started to go inside and still my mind and stop my judgment of myself, or my fear of being around other people, or my fear of taking on someone else's stuff, or looking at the origins of the motivations to feel a certain way, and looking back at that structural sequence inside myself of the emotional and mental projections onto myself of being too sensitive. I really started to break down a lot of limiting belief structures and see how my ego had used that as a way to limit myself, as a way to keep myself from seeing deeper and understanding that there's a much grander possibility for myself to be free of that limiting belief. To use just a simple concept that I could actually be free of that space was really, really hard to accept at first. The more I went inside, especially with the standing stake Qigong, the more I began to understand how putting up boundaries is sort of like the initial step to understanding how to have healthy relationships. And the main thing about having healthy relationships and having the courage to tell people no, tell yourself no, to not do something that does not support you, that does not support alignment, that does not support your heart, that actually harms you. You know, it's sort of one of those things where in this day and age where we have a lot of breakdown in community support and community structure. I mean, this is, you know, great that we have social media and we can come together as a community and talk about these things. It's important to understand that believing that you are too sensitive or that you are an empath can lead to an attachment and an emotional codependency with needing that as your identity and being attached to and wallowing in that limited belief as your identity. And again, everyone is in their own space. Everyone is in a different space. Everyone's on a different path. So I'm sort of speaking from my experience. The more I went inside, the more I realized that, yes, it's important to understand how to control interactions with other people. It's important to have healthy space for yourself. Absolutely. Absolutely. But when you get really strong inside and when you get really, really still, the need for boundaries for protection energetically begins to dissolve, because you can get so strong inside that it doesn't matter. And you can go through a whole day without needing space and being very, very, very busy. Like I was very, very busy today and was, you know, even late getting here because of how busy I was. And there's a different space when you go inside. There's a completely different space when you go inside, when you discipline yourself with alignment with yourself and stillness with yourself. Connection to the source is another way to look at it, another way to call it. There is a discipline there. There's a space there that is very still and very calm. And it's really important to understand that there is this space that you can connect with, that you can build for yourself, that you can give to yourself, that you can align with, and that you can be present with and be in observation of everything else around you. And that's the whole thing. When you go into observation and you understand that you can just observe everything instead of letting it affect you all the time, it changes everything.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. And I take away the point that, yes, being an empath was their identity. And as Eckhart says, the moment that thought formation starts, I'm an empath, I'm a highly sensitive person, your ego has ballooned, right? And the whole teaching for Eckhart is you disidentify from any and every, you're not a female, you're not white, black, or brown, you're not, you just, if we can know of ourselves at the energetic level of being the formlessness, the invisible essence that we are, that is all that is needed. That invisible, formless essence, our presence, we give it words, but like you name the Tao shall always be nameless. It's like that. There are no words to explain that vibration, high vibrational frequency that Caesar was talking about or April was talking about. So raise your vibrational frequency and you'll realize all there is to it is raising the vibrational frequency where we are experiencing the feeling tone of gratitude, joy, um, humility, compassion, empathy. When you are experiencing that, human is experiencing that, then no longer will they have boundaries. When I'm compassionate, when I see myself in the other, when I see myself in Kelly, when I see myself in Caesar, I see myself in Eileen, in April, Louise, in all of you out there, then where are the boundaries, right? There are no boundaries. We are one. It's just one energy speaking. I think Louise was going to say this because she always says that. Go ahead, Louise.
Yes,
Thank you. Kelly.
yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. So thank you. But yes, I think that we have to be very careful about labeling ourselves, saying I'm highly sensitive, I'm easily angered, I'm an empath, whatever, because then we disempower ourselves. We also um, believe it, and that's the universe believes it as well. So we get stuck in a corner. But that has been one of the things that has helped me along my journey is just viewing other people as myself. And then it turns everything around when we see each other as one instead of separating and labeling and when you view people, humans, whatever, as one, then things naturally happen, like boundaries. Like you don't have to set hard boundaries because they just happen. And that's been my experience, with everything really. Like an example I have is my sister wanted to bring a couple of Christmases ago, she wanted to bring her boyfriend with her and spend Christmas. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. But as we started talking, she was telling me that he had just been out of prison and, he had all these issues. And like my first thought was like, oh, I can't have somebody that just came out of prison stay at our house. I have kids, and I just said, you know what? Stop it. Stop labeling, stop judging. Whatever will be, and you'll deal with it as it comes. And so I just let it go. And about 2 or 3 days before she was going to come at Christmas time, he got arrested and they broke up and they never came. And so all of that, if I would have continued on, I would have been worried and upset and maybe told her not to come and started a fight, like a lot of stuff could have happened. But once I just decided to let it go and to stop judging and labeling, it worked itself out and I didn't have to do anything.
Perfect. One of the things we said in the last, this is one of Abraham Hicks's favorite phrase or favorite way of expressing this, where she says the vibrational energy of the problem is different than the vibrational energy of the solution. So if you have, but when you would have resisted, you would be at the vibrational energy of the problem. When you would have said, why is he coming? Now I'm going to, the children are going to be affected by whatever his behavior is and influence, his energy is going to influence them, their little children and all that. Then the problem wouldn't have gone away. Just because you surrendered and gave in, the solution automatically took care of itself, right? The universe responded. That is how connected we are. And Betty, if that person can understand or get to that level of conscious connection with source, where they can connect and know this unity consciousness is the one greatest multidimensional, the multisensory aspect of every human being. Once we can get to that, then unlimited, boundless abundance is on that person's way. Right now, they're cutting themselves off. Thank you, Luis. I don't know why I knew that would be your answer. So just look at how we are bouncing off of each other. Within a few months, we've gotten so connected, right? Like Adine was saying, all her thoughts were being expressed. So we didn't tell each other, or we are not chatting. It's just telepathic. We're communicating with each other. Ideas are going back and forth. So beautiful. This is the example that we are showing here itself, how we can speak for each other, right? It's like you're married into a long marriage and you're already finishing your husband's or partner's sentence or your child's sentence, right? Thank you, Louise. April.
Yeah, I think you guys have pretty much already said everything. I would just reiterate that you really need to connect to source for this. And I'm not sure if this person is talking for themselves or they're talking about somebody else and having a concern about others. But either way, you have intuition for a reason. You have an inner guidance system for a reason. If you want to do Esther Hicks, you've got a vibrational sense for a reason. And if it doesn't feel good, that's pretty much the answer. So you have that intuition for a reason. It's always to guide and always to help. And I would just listen.
And that is the other multidimensional aspect of being the multisensory being. In our vibrational energy, we become highly intuitive. We exactly know where we are going, right, right, April? Like it's almost as like a directive is coming from source. Go do this, pick this book up, go make coffee, right?
The secret is listening, right? That's the secret, is learning to listen to it. But yes, you're right.
So this is a beautiful, beautiful pointer that April has given. Listen to anything and everything, anything that comes across your path. Listen. If you're waiting in the grocery store line, somebody says something, right? Hey, why don't you apply for this college? Go apply. If you meet a homeless guy, the homeless guy says something, God bless you. Feel the blessings of God, because planetary intelligence or source through that human is actually communicating. That is the intuition. Your intuition may not come as a thought onto you. Human beings around you are telling you, right, what the direction should be. So to give you all um, I've written a book, and I was working with the publisher to publish the book, and suddenly he said, "Did you get it checked by an editor?" And then we have a common friend, so he said, "Did you ask him to edit the book?" I let it go. A couple of weeks later, he asked me again, "Did you get a chance to talk to him or write him an email?" And I was like, that means planetary intelligence source is telling me my book needs editing. It is that kind of following. Through your publisher, something is coming through that human. Do it. Follow, follow the instruction blindly, right? And you'll realize, suddenly you'll connect the dots. Oh, that happened and that happened, and I listened to this person, and finally look where I am because I listened. So beautiful, beautiful pointer, April. Like that part, if everybody can get that listening skill, that intuitive listening skill, and actually listening to human beings that are around you, right? Because the signs are there. It may be in a newspaper article or a news picture is coming through, and you see the so listening. Beautiful, 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 April. That was a beautiful. You always come up like towards the end of the video. You always come up at some point, or because somebody else was telling me about the soul contract, which Willow, the person who lost her son, he was murdered, right? And you talked about soul contract, and she was like, "Oh my God, I wish I would have watched this video live." So she was thanking you, April. Thank you. Humbled by the insights today. Caesar, go ahead.
Okay. You were just speaking on the impulses as life is always, the universe is always giving you signs. And I think first and foremost, you have to be present in the awareness to get them signs. And that could be just walking down the street, overhearing a conversation, and you hear something and you think, wow, I just needed to hear that. Or you might be in the car listening to the radio, heard a song 1,000 times and just heard one little lyric. And because you were present and aware and you're looking for the signs, you'll start to get them. And when, the one thing that leads to the next, that leads to the next, it's pretty much just your grid filling in. And like Abraham Hicks always says, you don't really have to force anything to happen. It will happen when it's time, in its time. And just go with the flow. Don't ever try to rush things. Don't have to do things the hard way. If you're in a good state of vibrational frequency, that of gratitude, the universe is going to reflect back of what you feel. You just gather that momentum and just ride the wave and let one moment lead to the next. And Bashar, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Bashar. His name is Daryl Anker. He's a channel just like Esther Hicks's with Abraham. And I like something he always says. His message is pretty much the same as Abraham's. But he always says to do the most exciting thing available to you in the moment without any expectation of the outcome. And that will lead you to the next most exciting thing. And the most exciting thing, available in the moment might be reading a book or walking a dog, whatever it is. Do that because essentially it will lead you to the next thing. And again, that's, the grid filling in. And it's just about riding the momentum of life, going with the flow and doing things the easy way. I'm going to have to get Lois's book. I don't know much about it, but from what I've heard just now, it's I like the demeanor there. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, just the going with the flow and doing things the easy way. There's no need to do things the hard way. And if you think you're supposed to be somewhere and you're not probably not supposed to be there because it's not your time. If you were supposed to be there, you would be there. Yes. So yeah, you're just paying attention to the little impulses that life is constantly dishing out, and listen for the signs, like she said there. It's good advice. Like the synchronicities always happening.
Perfect. Thank you, Caesar. The grid filling in is, what did she say? Like you have to be a vibrational match to your manifestation. So why are a lot of people go say, oh, why is this not happening? If I'm thinking of manifesting a car, why is it not happening? Why is it not happening? The grid filling in is the why is it not happening is the resistance, one. And the two is you're not at that human being is not at that vibrational frequency of matching where they can receive the car. So the joy that Caesar is saying about Bashar is if he were in exuberant joy like we are, like we love coming up on these panels and talking about these topics, right? So when you do something that you love, it doesn't feel like it's just joy expressing itself. So you're doing something that is joyful, right? So continue on your day, like drink a cup of coffee or drink your smoothie. I had to drink my heavy metal detox smoothie that had spirulina in it. and it had a fishy taste. Oh my God. That was one of those moments, Louise. But I did because I felt like it's awesome for my body. So I shifted. First, it was like fishy taste. Then I shifted the energy. No, it's really good. I'm grateful that I have good ingredients in the smoothie. So that's an example how you shift it, right, to joy. So always stay in that state of joy. Eileen? Thank you, Caesar.
I don't think I have anything to add, but I did want to mention that oh, I lost the name. The person who was asking the question.
Betty?
Yes, thank you. She did clarify a little bit in restating the question. It's the one that I put, but you guys just haven't gotten to yet. I wonder how to best direct or guide intuitively spiritual seekers who are in the early stages of awakening, so they don't end up becoming lost in the deluge of information that they end up losing their sense of self. So I think you guys have kind of touched on it a little bit already anyway. And the only thing that I would add is that I wouldn't necessarily be focusing on directing anyone anywhere, but more so focusing on myself. And then, if anything, that would be more of role modeling. But I just wanted to add that she did have a question in there, and she restated it in the comments again. So I wanted to bring that up.
Is this the question? I wonder how to best direct or guide intuitively.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual seekers who are in the early stages of awakening, so that they don't end up becoming lost in a deluge of information, that they end up losing their sense of self, deriving their sense of identity with what they are discovering, hence creating and attaching an identity after identity. Okay, that's the question. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you for pointing us to the question.
No problem.
So we'll take a quick round of going through this part. I think we have discussed the whole thing. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We did that you cannot have an identity, right? The more identity you have, this ego. And then how do they stop becoming lost in a deluge of information? Caesar,
She added on another question in her explanation that followed up to kind of get to this question, and said, are we truly awakening, or are we creating more confusion and separation because of our beliefs and because of our understanding of the one consciousness is only an idea, a mental concept, intellectualizing it, and something we have yet to experience in the depths of our being. I think she's trying to get her question across by giving more information, but in our format of Zoom, it just can't get all of that over here.
Okay.
But we could also look at it for next time if you want to be able to read the whole thing in one thing.
And who talked about growing number of lonely and depressed people and people disconnecting because of so much confusion? Okay, she was saying
this is all the same comment. It just can't copy over altogether because
right.
Zoom limits the number of characters.
I almost think we need to be able to really look at this, because she's got so many layers in this. That's why I said before, I'm not sure is she asking for somebody else? Is she?
This is really her question, the one that I put up. I wonder what the best way to direct and guide. Yeah. It just was in the middle of a lot of other things, so it was hard to catch it on Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. So your advice, Eileen, is don't even try to direct people.
I would probably read it after, so you can read the whole 2 sections together.
Okay.
Her follow-up as well.
This question. We quickly answer this part.
Sure.
I wonder how to best direct or guide spiritual seekers who are in the early stages of awakening, so that they don't end up becoming lost in a deluge of information. Caesar, please, could you start? Thank you.
Sure. Best guide a spiritual seeker in the delusion. Okay. Gosh, I don't know. She mentioned about losing yourself within that. I believe, perhaps putting the label on yourself as anything, other than I am, you are limiting yourself, and apparently you can get lost in that. I mean, as a clairvoyant or medium, something of that nature where you're labeling yourself as such, and to be doing that or whatever it is you're doing at a high level, there has to be a little bit of a cautionary measure in place, because as Eckhart expresses about doing something and then having a large financial gain about it, or a lot of people being noticing you, and now you become somewhat of a celebrity. People tend to get lost within themselves over something. I like Wayne Dyer's story about how he started in his practice, and he was chasing the money. The money was a motivator, and until he took the money equation out of it, the money did follow him. However, it was the willingness to chase the money as part of doing what he did kept him from the financial gain. And then he realized that the money didn't mean anything at all. But as far as losing yourself within that, within something you're doing, that's, I'm not sure I understand the question, but yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that one, other than losing yourself in something as the identity when you're as a spiritual seeker. I'm not sure where that's going. I know the best spiritual teacher is life. That's all I got for that. Lost in the question a little bit.
Thank you, Caesar. And I think what I saw was Dr. Wayne Dyer never could end his ego, because in one of the conversations with Eckhart, he starts to compare, oh, you're number 4 or number 2, and I'm number 6, right? In the highly influential Watkins list, highly influential spiritual teachers, top 100. And Eckhart was number 2 or something. I think it was the Pope, and then Eckhart was number 2, and he was comparing. Yeah, I was like, there's a certain amount of ego, even though you're a spiritual teacher, right? So thank you. Thank you for that example. Louise, did you want to contribute to, I wonder how to best direct or guide?
Yeah, well, I think I kind of feel hesitant to answer until I read the whole thing, but again, it's just, my first feeling was not to worry so much about directing or what could possibly happen, because she said something along the lines that something might happen. I don't remember now, but I would just say not to worry about stuff, or and just allow things to happen and then deal with it as it comes.
So I wonder how to best direct or guide. Don't direct or guide. I think what Eckhart says is your presence power will be the best guide,
Right.
right? When somebody asks the questions, how can I teach my family, or how can I teach my friends how to have learn the teachings of Eckhart Tolle? He says, don't even start, don't even talk about spiritual teachings. So your presence power will be the greatest teacher. So that's another offering. Thank you, Louise. Thank you for
Yes.
bringing that up. Appreciate it. April.
Yeah, I think that is the answer, Poonam, is that to be connected to source, to allow that to guide you. Like, for example, when I do a reading, if I have this one lady that I do read quite often, probably 2-3 times a year. And because of that, I know her and I know her story. So if I feel myself leaning into it, if I feel myself
wanting to give her an answer, I pull back. That's not the teacher. That's not the healer. I pull back and I say, okay. And I let source guide me. I let presence guide me. I think that's the best teacher, being very true to that and very true to what you're teaching and being an example, being the example for them, like Eckhart says, they get much more from watching you. Even our children get much more from watching you. Children do not do what you say, they do what you do. Right? Yeah. So that's what
Perfect.
I would suggest.
And I think we bring up Abraham Hicks a lot. She is a easier language. Thank you, April, for that input. Because what she says is, then you're disempowering the other person. You're saying that the other person does not have the power to achieve their alignment with inner beingness, right? Like all these people that you're saying are spiritual seekers, let them go ahead. Let them go ahead, think that they're an empath. Let them set boundaries. Whatever it is that they're doing, let the drama be the drama. And it is okay. That is what is. Because they're going to learn eventually that the alignment within our beingness, like April was saying, is all that is needed. Because we cannot tell another person on how to get aligned, because alignment within our beingness, this goes back to your question of unity consciousness. Alignment with inner beingness is an experience. I cannot show Caesar how to be aligned. Kelly cannot show another person how to be, if they're doing the Qigong practice, how to be aligned. They have to know of how their energy is flowing. Yeah, you can engage in that practice, but nobody can teach you alignment. That's your own experience. That human, just like the dog is already aligned. We were seeing a raccoon with Caesar today. That raccoon is already aligned. It knows what it needs to do. So we cannot teach another being alignment. Each being has their own power. If not, we are disempowering them. Just like the first question, we're disempowering the child, that the child does not have the wisdom to know what they need to do. And the grandmother is interfering and the mother is interfering, and this is a grown adult child. No, let them make their mistakes and let them learn. They'll eventually get to where we are, right? So, Kelly, go ahead. And then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. All right. So a lot of really good things have been said. It's wonderful to hear the supportive facilitation comments that everyone is talking about, because I completely agree. You cannot teach someone how to be in alignment. You have to open the door for people. You have to support people being able to see for themselves the path they need to take to move through their resistance, their fears, to find themselves. There are a lot of ways, a lot of good books out there about nonviolent communication, about how to have two-way communication. I find teaching kids recently, starting to teach kids recently, has been a whole new rekindling of learning experience of how not to assume or expect, just to sort of like deepen my own ability to step back and to just observe and let people have their experience, and to just support without interfering in someone's experience, without interjecting my own understanding, and being able to support these 3 and 5 and 7-year-olds to just play if they need to, kind of thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful reaffirmation and confirmation of all the work that I've done. And I feel that's a great example in this context to not interfere in someone's experience, not to try and influence them in their choices. I mean, obviously, if you're a parent and you have a kid and they're not 18 yet, or they're not 21, they're not a legal adult yet, and they're still living with you, there's, you know, rational understanding of having, you know, control over the situation and guiding and being very vocal about supporting and sharing, you know, how to make good decisions. Because I mean, that's what being a parent is about. Finding, you know, a bunch of young adults or youth and, you know, children in my life recently, you know, my partner's kids and stuff like that, it has really opened me up to see how how effective having two-way communication really is, and how stepping back into observation and just supporting conversation and openness and non-judgment and non-violent communication. And when I say non-violent, I mean non-fearful, non-fear-based, non-judgmental, but, you know, stepping back into that space inside and just having a conversation and seeing where it goes, and supporting the loving kindness aspects of the conversation and putting emphasis on those. And as it's been said, leading by example, because kids will follow and do what you do. Young kids, especially, again, like 3 and 5 year olds. Oh my God. And it's so true. Even with adults, it really doesn't matter what age of a person you're dealing with. Lead by example. When you are still inside, and this is the thing that I found, when you are still inside and you're changing yourself, that effect ripples outward energetically. And you can lead by example in a whole different way, where you, in a lot of cases, will never have to say a thing about what you're doing or what spiritual thing you are doing, because your humanness will shine through, your heart will shine through, and your loving kindness will shine through and will be the example. And people will register that on such a primal level, on such a deep emotional, energetic level, that you don't need to go into, oh, I'm doing this spiritually, or I'm doing this. It's like, no, the example of you being such a kind, loving, supportive human will shine through everything.
Thank you, Kelly. To exemplify that further, Kelly, I'll give you an example. We had a breakthrough. Was it last Friday or the Friday before? Somebody in the group meditation finally made a breakthrough, had an awakening, and they were consulting with me. And every consultation, the only advice I gave: did you do your meditation? Did you know? Did you do it next week? Did you do your meditation? There was no instruction of, did you do your breath work? Did you do your yoga? Did you do your qigong? Did you eat well? Did you sleep well? One instruction: did you do your meditation? Did you do your meditation? And I know the reason why I say is because I knew this person was very good with sacred acoustics. They had amazing results with sacred acoustics. And I knew that this identification would happen once they got to stillness. They needed to surrender to that stillness. But that's the power. The power is within you. That's what Eckhart is teaching you. The potential, that potentiation to get to presence, to get to unity consciousness, and experience it as an experience of vibrational energy is within you. You just have to, just like this person, you have to come attend our group meditation and you'll know who that person is, because it's preciousness when you see that somebody made a breakthrough. And it's just 10 months of practice of knowing what needs to be done, what needs to be done, what needs to be done. Thank you, Kelly. Aline, did you want to contribute to the last question? Anything more?
I honestly can't say anything right now because You guys haven't seen the comments, but wait till you see the comments.
Is
I
that
can't
bad?
say anything. Just talk about the universe. Just, wow. I can't say anything.
Okay. It's getting late for you as well. It's like almost 10 o'clock, right? So I'm grateful that you're here this late. And it's the same with Caesar. He's on the East Coast. I don't know about April. So if it's getting late, I'm really, really grateful that you'll stayed this long. And infinite blessings to Betty for asking the question, for making it such a lively and exuberant conversation. So we are filled with gratitude. Have a fantastic day, everyone. We meet for group meditation. Infinite blessings. Bye. Much love. Thank you.